I the most physically fit person in the universe? No. Does that mean I can't win a physical altercation? Not necessarily. Given how often folks get into scuffles at NRC, if I were to somehow magically end up there, I'm sure I'd have to throw down more than once through no fault of my own. What I'm less sure of is whether I'd be able to hold my own or be completely obliterated. I suppose that I'll never know for sure how these hypothetical encounters would go, but I do have a pretty good idea of who I would be able to win against and who would defeat me. So today, we're going to see how well I'd fare in one-on-one combat with every member of the main cast to see just how likely I'd be able to survive this hypothetical scenario. For this consideration, I'm only taking into account each character's physical abilities because I do not have magic and would lose every single fight that involves magic. So, to give myself a fleeting chance of success, magic is completely off the table. Also, I'm going to be talking about EN server story content, including vignettes and events, so this is your spoiler warning. With that said, starting off with Diasomnia this time to mix things up, and going straight for the top dog Malleus, I would lose this fight so dang hard. However, I do think that Malleus would think that it's hilarious that I'm even attempting to harm him in any way. So I do think I'd get away without any serious damage. I can imagine him just standing there where I try to throw hands, teasing me with just how much my puny human knuckles are tickling him, and getting a kick out of the whole ordeal. I feel like this scenario comes with a bit of condescension as well, but I'd be fine with that given how terrifyingly strong Malleus is even without his magic. It's either he laughs at my pathetic attempt, or he takes me seriously and actually puts effort into our contest, accidentally breaking every single bone in my body in the process. We can see that when Malleus is actually serious about this sort of contest, he can do things that defy human perception. As in Bean's Day, he and Lilia go at it so hard that the onlookers are stunned. They can hardly even see what is happening, and while the dust being kicked up is part of it, I have no doubt that the two Fae are actually zipping around so fast that they cannot be perceived by the human onlookers. We also see that in the Culinary Crucible, that Malleus has a really hard time cracking eggs because he's just too darn strong and can't get the pressure right. I'm sure if he flicked my arm, the bone would break, which is a very scary thought. And now that I'm thinking about it, even a harmless sleepover pillow fight could be disastrous if Malleus doesn't properly manage his strength, which is very unfortunate because I think he would enjoy a sleepover a lot. Until that point, anyways. But this scuffle puts me squarely at 0 and NRC at 1. Next up is Lilia, who would also completely wreck me. However, he wouldn't break every single bone in my body. He'd only break a few. Lilia would absolutely take the spar seriously, however, I do think he has way better control over his face strength than Malleus does, so while I might end up bruised, I likely wouldn't be in the hospital. Despite his age, Lilia has a lot of battle experience in a variety of conditions in a variety of locations, and he knows all sorts of tricks to outsmart his opponents. The guy could do this cool backflip thing back then, and can still do it now, so I don't think there's any contest here. Lilia is also the individual responsible for training Sebek, Silver, and Malleus, and all three of them still have trouble beating Lilia. Even Malleus, as strong as he is lacking in experience and does eventually lose to Lilia during the Bean's Day scuffle. And if I couldn't beat Malleus before, there's no way I'm beating Lilia now. Maybe Lilia would give me some pointers after the fight, which would be nice, but it doesn't help my score, which means it is now 0-2, and it's not looking up anytime soon, because Silver is also a really good fighter who's in great physical condition. Like, if you've seen his PE uniform card, you know that this guy's got the muscles, and he could break my bones, but I don't think that he would. Instead, I think Silver would be gentle overall, especially given my lack of martial prowess, and I feel like he would try to help me during the fight. Hey, you should step with your other foot to be more stable, or don't hold your practice sword like that, otherwise the impact could hurt your wrist, or if you're closing in like so, then do it like this, etc., etc. I think a fight between Silver and I would just end up becoming a training session, which is appreciated, but is also not something I can technically win. The only chance I'd even have is maybe knocking him over while he's sleeping and then winning via that technicality, but that's such an unpredictable scenario that I'm not betting on it. If not for his gentle nature, I'd be on my butt in no time flat, and honestly, even with it, he might take things seriously at first, which would spell disaster for me. So the score is now 0-3. Could I maybe score a point against Sebek? His martial prowess is a little less than Silver's, right? So maybe I could have a chance? Oh, what hopeful thinking, but no. Sebek would absolutely wreck me not only in our physical contest, but in the mental realm as well. He's going to be so smug and so condescending when he wins, and that's even if he agrees to fight me in the first place. I can imagine Sebek refusing the contest outright because such a weak human couldn't possibly win against him, and while he is technically correct in my case, it is still condescending, and I don't appreciate the attitude. Now, if I did happen to goad him into fighting me somehow, I still have no shot at winning. There is no way I can go toe-to-toe against the dude who can free climb and chop dozens of residents' woods while still having energy to burn, and I also don't have the solid determination to succeed that he has. Sebek is very powerful and would never ever allow himself to lose to a magicless human, especially with Malleus standing right there. So yet again, it is a clear knockout, which means that Diasomnia, on the whole, is not a dorm that I should be messing with. But if I did, I would be in a world of hurt. So good job to them, I guess. This puts me at the grand total of 0 to NRC's 4 at this point in the contest. Woo. On to Ignihide now. We'll start with Idia, who is someone I for sure could beat in a fight. If we're talking stats, Idia is lacking in both strength and stamina. He's dumped all of his experience into intelligence and wisdom, so while he may be wickedly smart and can out-hack everyone on the planet, he can't do much physically. Climb the bell tower stairs? Nope. Run around the track without dying? Nope. Survive any PE activity? Not well. The boy seems rather frail, which is perhaps just because of his pale complexion, but since he never leaves his room, I doubt he has any practical experience in physical combat. Executing a Street Fighter combo is very different from actually fighting on the street, and while I'm not well versed either, I was a part of my university's boxing club for a bit, so I think I'd be fine against Idia. I also have a feeling that Idia would just forfeit the fight up front to avoid actually having to participate in it, which makes me winner by default. Is it a glorious win? No. But it's a win anyways, so I'm finally on the scoreboard with 1-4. But winning the fight against Idia, or even fighting him in general, will invoke Ortho's ire, and Ortho's entire body is made out of metal, which I don't want to break my knuckles against. That's even assuming I could land a hit on him in the first place, since Ortho's gear allows him to float and glide, which I imagine makes him a very slippery fellow. He seems pretty nimble and rather strong, and while he wasn't built for martial combat specifically, he does have a certain strength that would lend itself well to this sort of contest. And here's the real kicker about Ortho. He's got giant energy beams that would instantly incinerate me if I did not dodge them. Would that be cheating in this specific scenario? Probably. But does that really matter when my impending doom is right there? No. I don't want to fight Ortho, but if I had to, he would win no contest. So another point gets added to the NRC scoreboard, 1-5. After Ignihide comes Pomfiore, and we've got a whole lovely lineup of people who are all formidable in their own unique ways. We'll start with Vil to keep things consistent, and while he may not look threatening or particularly strong on the surface, he's actually really well trained. He goes on runs, works out regularly to maintain his figure, and he's also practiced various fighting techniques for movies that he was in. Vil is able to flip Floyd over and toss him a decent distance during Bean's Day because of training he received for his role in a spy movie. Vil is also able to take on another group of farmers who disrespected him during Bean's Day, with a little help from Silver, but these kiddos remark that they were outclassed by Vil in that fight. Plus, he's also versed in dance, which is another physically intensive activity that puts him leaps and bounds above me. Not only is Vil going to win against me, but he's also going to do so beautifully. And honestly, I'm just grateful for the privilege of having front row seats to my own defeat. Well done, Vil, gaining another point for NRC. Rook will also be giving Vil a round of applause, and afterwards will be fighting me and winning. Rook is an odd bean who I don't think has fought anyone with fists on screen that I can remember. However, he is a part of the SDC crew, so he can at least dance, and I do think he's pretty strong overall. He can hunt while using a traditional bow, which I think is something that requires a decent amount of arm strength to operate, and he's totally chill climbing trees and army crawling through bushes for his queries, so I doubt he's weak. Plus, he'll likely have already gathered all the information he needs on me and my fighting style, or lack thereof, to have formulated a solid strategy. Also, since he is so observant, he'll probably be able to read my moves during the fight effectively and counter them as well. That said, I also think Rook is someone who will give advice during or after the fight. I also think that he is someone who would be able to distract me with words in order to win more easily. He's not going to be condescending like Sebek would be, but the flow of compliments could feel very weird and tank my motivation or just throw off my guard. All in all, Rook is not going to let his house warden down, and he's going to defend Pomfiore's honor, so that's another point for NRC. Now, Epel ain't one to back down from a fight. No way, no how, and he prides himself on being a bit of a bad boy. He'd get into scuffles in his day, and Epel is rather confrontational overall. In White Rabbit Fest, he was extremely ready to throw down. During the beach episode, he heads-butts the other delinquents. And at orientation, he even challenges Vil to a fight, which was ill-advised, but things happen. While he didn't win against Vil in that particular fight, I don't think that this means he'd automatically lose against me, considering that Epel has a lot of other things going for him. Instead, I think all of these experiences give Epel some very practical battle knowledge that could make him a force to be reckoned with. However, he's not fully equipped for every situation, as he also asked Lilia for some tips during Lilia's labware vignette on how to deal with people, specifically those that are larger than him. Even still, given how many scuffles Epel has been in, and how often he seems to seek out this kind of danger, and how much energy he has in general, I don't think I'd be able to defeat him. I think I'd be much closer to winning than with some of the other folks that we've had so far, but I do think that Epel would be able to pull from some hidden strength or his moxie to end up winning. So yet another point gets added to NRC, and I'm starting to think that I would not survive this school for very long. Scarabia is up next, and first up is Kalim, who I do not want to fight at all. Not that I actually want to fight any of the main cast to begin with, but I especially do not want to fight Kalim, and I don't think that Kalim wants to fight me either. In fact, I think if I challenged him, he would instead offer a feast and some chatting as a way to resolve our conflict, which is my ultimate weakness. I cannot say no to food. I absolutely love a party, and since I don't want to fight him to begin with, I would be so down for this type of resolution. However, that also means that Kalim wins, because it was by his actions that the conflict was resolved, and I'm so desperate for a point here. If the feast did not work and we did end up fighting, I doubt I'd be able to actually get anywhere because of his quick feet. Kalim is a dancer who is used to moving with and around other folks, and this strength is actually what Leona builds a strategy around during the bead brawl in Clout Calling on the Savannah. However, this strategy also develops from Kalim's weakness, because during the training sequence we can see that Kalim is not very good at actually throwing hands. Unfortunately for me, even though he is not good at the offense, this defense would be a problem, and I don't think that I'd be able to win even still. At best, our scuffle would end in a party. However, to get the point, I'm going to settle for a draw here based off of the bead brawl context. So both NRC and I are going to get a point here. which does not change the standing at all, but it boosts my ego ever so slightly. Jamil, on the other hand, is harder to read, as I know he probably wouldn't back down from a fight, but I'm also not sure exactly what strengths or weaknesses he has in this department. What I do know is that Jamil is also a dancer who also has quick feet and can move around extremely well. His dexterity would be a problem for me in this contest in the same way as Kalim. However, Jamil is also someone who's very willing to play dirty, which means he will absolutely be taking shots at me in ways I might not anticipate. Jamil is also extremely smart, and I think he'd be able to actively analyze the fight as it's happening and adapt his strategy on the fly. This, I think, is a very important differentiator, which puts him ahead of me and means he'd win the fight. I feel like if I were to try hard enough and train well enough, I would be able to defeat him. However, as I am now, that is not the case, so yet another point goes to NRC. Now, Octavanel is an interesting place because Azul is an interesting case, and I think off of stamina alone, given what we've seen of Azul's physical strength on land, I'm tempted to think of him in a similar vein as Idia, but not exactly the same. Azul is by no means going to give up before the fight even begins, no way. And I think he's also wickedly smart and would be able to analyze every little movement that I made to figure out the best time to strike. However, Azul is not the biggest fan of PE, dancing, or most land-based physical activities, at least from what I've seen. So I think I might be able to outlast his stamina enough to give myself a fighting chance. The big problem that I would be facing here, and the largest threat to my success, is Azul's arm strength. Floyd comments at one point that Azul basically has all 8 of his arms condensed down into the 2 human ones, and if that is in fact true, and I get stuck in a headlock, I am done. If Azul can grab a hold of me at all before his stamina drops, I would be done for, and I'm not even sure I'd still have a chance even if his stamina did drop. Heck, even just a punch with the strength of 4 arms behind it is going to end the fight. With that said, I think I'd do well enough against Azul, but I would likely still lose. So yet another point goes to NRC. Jade would have a delightful time making me regret my own existence, and I am not here for it. I'd avoid both him and Floyd like the plague if I could help it, but since I've already challenged Azul, they'll also likely want in on that action. Jade, like Rook, would likely already be aware of my strengths and weaknesses and would toy with me the entire time that we're battling. He would make it seem like he's going easy on me, trying to make sure the fight is fair, but we'd both know that he's just getting a kick out of my feeble attempts to best him, and it would be ridiculously frustrating for me. Jade has had a much better time adjusting to life on land, I think, at least compared to Azul. And while he's also not the biggest fan of flight or dancing, he did found an entire club on the premise of mountaineering. Hiking and mountain climbing are vigorous activities if done in the areas where I think Jade does them, considering the rare herbs and plants that he's brought back from his excursions. So he's got the battle knowledge, the stamina, the raw physical power to make this a no contest. So I'm just going to give him the point before my bones get broken. That just leaves Floyd, who has all of the same menacing power as Jade, just in a different form. I think the number of bones that get broken will entirely depend on his mood and how much fun the fight is to him. So the time I'd be having in this specific contest is a real toss-up. But what isn't a toss-up is my inevitable loss. Floyd isn't going to go easy on me either. I think that we are all aware of that, and given the terrifying reputation he has for his squeezes, it's safe to say that I do not stand a chance. He's pretty darn strong to begin with, and is very active in all sorts of things, including the basketball team. When Floyd is on the court, no one is able to stop him, and when he puts his mind to something, he has terrifying focus. Even when he's not in the mood, he can be a serious force, especially if whatever you're doing is bothering him. And unlike both Jade and Azul, Floyd likes dancing. So he's also going to have more fancy footwork to work with during the battle. I don't think there is a way to spin things here to allow me to win, so Floyd is getting NRC yet another point. Savannah Claw is up next with Leona up first, and this is also a contest that I cannot win. Even if Leona is feeling lazy, he's still gonna win. In fact, in that scenario, he's likely to end things even faster so he can get back to napping or whatever it is he wants to do. Leona tussles with his doormates on occasion, and in the bead brawl we get to see him fight with his fists, and my goodness does he fight effectively. Leona is yet another boy who's got the brains to outwit his opponents, and he's got the physical strength to back him up if his strategy fails. In a practical sense, if I were to waltz up to Leona and ask him to fight, he would likely laugh in my face and wave me off, or he'd pit his doormates against me instead like he does to the MC in Book 3 when we're trying to get a Rook. I suppose I could rationalize him laughing me off as a win, because Leona would have, in a way, been accepting defeat, I guess, which would be nice for me. But in an actual contest of physical strength, there is no way for me to win against him as I am, so Leona is winning another point for NRC. Ruggie is up next, and Ruggie to me is another gray area because if we scuffled, we'd both be going no holds bar, completely understandable, all the underhanded things will be happening. But that's only if we scuffled at all. And I'm not saying this to give myself a pity point, as I've been talking about, but because I think Ruggie would actually be the most likely to just not, outside of Idia, naturally. Ruggie is no stranger to scuffles and fights, and he's had to elbow his way into and out of various situations in the past, with some of those situations being survival. Because of this, Ruggie has all sorts of tricks that he would use to ensure that the conflict ended with him on top. And if we did fight, I do think that he would win. But I can see Ruggie running away or avoiding conflict altogether, similar to what happened during the confrontation in Book 2, because it honestly is not worth his time. Ruggie can't get anything out of a win besides some brownie points and an ego boost, I guess, and his time could be much better spent at a part-time gig instead. So I think it's way more likely that Ruggie would just avoid this contest altogether, and there is no way that I would be able to catch him if he ran away from me. Does this mean that he would get the win because he'd escape me? Or does he lose by forfeiting from not having to challenge me? I guess he wins. So NRC gets yet another point. Last up for Savannah Claw is Jack, who is too much of a musclehead for me to stand a chance. I don't think Jack would be overly aggressive or mean in a fight, but he would absolutely take it as seriously as he could because it would be another chance for him to train. That said, given that I am not very strong, I also feel like I'd have to pitch this scuffle as a training opportunity for Jack to accept. He's not one to back down from a challenge, no. But I do think that he would be hesitant since it's such a clear win for him with me. I'm sure if I were to pitch it in the right way or goad him enough, the fight would happen, and I would be smoked. But perhaps I'd get a sparring partner out of it, and we would both work on bettering ourselves together. A girl can dream, no? But unfortunately for me, that dream comes at the cost of NRC getting another point in their favor, bringing our running tally up to 2-16. However, we are now at the dorm where I think I would do the best, at least in this consideration, and that's a Hartzlable. And a first in Hartzlable is a Riddle, who I feel is similar to Azul since he also has a caveat that will end in my eventual defeat, but leading up to that, Riddle is in a similar boat. Sure, the guy plays croquet and runs around Octavinelle to help his clothes dry. Presumably, anyways, he was able to do that the entire time. He might have collapsed at some point. It is very unclear. But such things may not be the end-all be-all of his physical might. Riddle strikes me as the type to rely way more on magic than physical strength, and while he is devoted to his studies at NRC, including PE, I just have a feeling I could do well against him in a physical altercation. For some reason, he seems like he's not actually that strong to me, and I can't put my finger on why. Technically speaking, running is not a strength training sport. It is more of an endurance thing. And the same could be said about croquet. That's not really exactly a strength training sport. And even the equestrian club, to an extent, I suppose you could make the argument that it is not in that vein either. I'm sure that there is a generic fitness routine that he and his club has to keep everyone in working order to be able to work around the horses and do all the things that they need to do, which could include some strength training on occasion. But I just don't feel like Riddle's attacks would have much of a bite to them in the same way as other folks on this list. However, because Riddle is involved in a lot of physical activities at this time, and he does his darndest to get an A in PE, because you can't have those grades slipping, I think he'd be formidable enough to give me trouble and ultimately win the fight. He's not tanky or absurdly strong, but he has his own unique strengths, and I think they could be a boon which would lead to his victory. So congrats to Riddle and by extension NRC on yet another point. Now, Trey, on the other hand, I could totally beat in a fight, and I don't know exactly why I feel that way, but I do feel like I would be doing just fine in this contest. Trey is a baker, which means he does have a lot of arm strength from whipping up icings and other delights, but I don't think it's nearly as much of a problem here as it was with Azul. Outside of that, he prides himself on just being your average Joe. He flies under the radar, and while I feel like this might be a bit manipulative on his part, we don't have any strong evidence for him being a secret genius like Jamil. So as far as I know, Trey's strength and martial prowess must also just be average. And if they are, I have a really good chance to win this scuffle. In fact, I think it's such a good chance that I'm just gonna take the point here. Cater is also another dub for me, because there is no way I am losing to him. The only advantage Cater has are his siblings, as he probably has a lot of experience fighting his sisters, as siblings tend to do that over various things and for various reasons. He would be coming into this conflict with a bit of prior experience, but I just don't think that's enough to defeat me. We can see in his PE uniform vignette that he tries to skip out on running by summoning clones of himself to do it for him, so he's probably slacking in other areas too, which would likely make him a weak opponent. He's also the first and only person during Riddle's overblot to suggest running away, so I imagine he's not very confident in his fighting abilities, whether they be magical or physical. Cater, unfortunately for him, will not be able to best me, so I get another point on the scoreboard. Wowee! The first of our freshmen, Ace, is going to be a win for me too. Ace has no real practical experience in this area that I'm aware of, and given how much he slacks off in literally every area of his life, I can't imagine he'd be too tough to defeat. He does have determination, and I don't think he'd go down easily, but I also don't think he'd be able to best me either. The dude is constantly trying to schmooze his way into and out of things, and while he is on the basketball team, I can't really imagine him practicing all that much. Ace does put a significant amount of effort into the SDC, but I feel like this was mainly for the money reward and not for the actual spirit of the competition or for the thrill of dance. I can almost guarantee that after the SDC, he completely forgot all of the choreography, and that just seems like his vibe to me. Although I can't dunk on him too much, as I also think he'd be able to throw a couple of good punches, and he probably is also used to scuffling with his brother. I just don't think that that matters as much here. I've got some practice too, mister, and I have the determination to win. So against Ace, it is a win. Now, Deuce is a completely different story. Deuce has so much experience scuffling that I stand no chance. There is no way I'm going to be able to hold a candle to Deuce. He is the legendary delinquent of Clocktown, a track star, a formidable, unstoppable force that I have no business messing with at all. In fact, I'm more scared of going toe-to-toe with Deuce than I am fighting either Sebek or Silver. I'm putting him up on the same tier as Malleus and Lilia because I do not want to mess with him at all. Even some of the Hearts level students that tussle with him over the eggs are stunned by Deuce's strength and determination, and I am not delusional enough to think that I ever have a chance. So another point goes to NRC. Now, Ramshackle is not technically a fully fledged dorm, and Grim is not technically a cat or weasel, but from a physical standpoint he might as well be, and I do not fight animals. I'm not going to throw hands with Grim, but there have been times where I have had to battle animals in a different sense. In the past, I have had cats. They're very lovely, but those cats were very smart, and they did not like the cat carrier, because that meant it was time to go on an adventure to the vet, which, very famously, is not an animal's favorite place to go. So, in this realm, I am a battle-hardened veteran, and in the battle of getting Grim to go to the doctor, I would absolutely win hands down. Bro can be bribed with some fancy tuna or maybe a lobster dinner at the lounge, which will hurt my wallet, but it will also save me from the claws and teeth of Grim. I am absolutely fine sacrificing some ball marks to keep this pesky varmint healthy, and if I could build up enough good memories after the doctor visits, I think he'd be more than happy to just go with me so that he could get the rewards afterwards. So in this contest, it is no contest. I am winning, which gives me one last victory to make the final tally 6-18. But wait, there's more. After hypothetically running through the entire campus and challenging every possible student to a fight, the staff have taken notice, and now they want to stop me, and the only way that they're going to do that is if they fight me too. So it's time for a flash round. Starting off with Trein, who I imagine would be the first to notice this trend, it's going to be a win for me. Trein is a bit past his prime, so to speak, and the weaving of flowers and glorious masquerade throughout his back, so I don't think he stands a chance in the slightest here. I'd go easy on him for sure, but I'm still going to be winning, so point to me. Crewel, on the other hand, would probably defeat me. If he's taking care of himself like Vil is taking care of himself, then I think our battle would end in a very similar way. I can't imagine that he doesn't know some form of self-defense, and considering that he is an NRC alum, he's probably got a lot of scuffle experience too, so point to NRC. With Vargas, it's a super duper obvious defeat. This man is entirely muscles. From his actual muscles to his thoughts, it is just fitness all day, every day. What contest could there possibly be? To be fair, I do feel like that there are folks that could go toe-to-toe with him, but those folks are Lilia and Malleus, who can go toe-to-toe with everybody. So, for everyone else, myself included, there is no contest, there is no point in trying to fight Vargas. It's a point to NRC. Now, Sam I don't really know, because I don't think he seems like the type to get into physical scuffles, but he also had a stint as the Shadow Man, which could have included physical altercations. I don't know, he will not tell us, but I think it is safe to assume that he's got at least a little bit of experience. I don't really know, though, with him. I don't have any thoughts on Sam's potential martial prowess, so I'm just gonna call this a tie. Crowley, though? Crowley? Mr. Negligence himself? Oh boy, am I ready to throw hands. I'm winning. It doesn't matter what experience Crowley has. The bird has not known, to my knowledge, a woman's sword, and my oh my, is he gonna know it now? Realistically, this doesn't mean I'd win per se, and I am a little concerned about his little claws, but I think without magic, he might be a bit weak. I don't really care that he's also Fae. I think I'm just winning. That's it. That's all there is to it. Which brings our final tally up to 9 versus 21. If I took this and made it a ratio to give me my percentage chance of surviving NRC, I'd have a 43% chance, which is way higher than I thought it was going to be. That's nearly a 50-50. And boy howdy do I like those odds. But I'm curious to hear what y'all's thoughts are on who you think you could go toe-to-toe with at NRC. Are you able to win more battles? Less battles? Let me know down below, and while you're there, let me know if you would like to see these kinds of videos and want more content like this. Or if you prefer, you could let me know with a like or a subscribe instead. And as always, before you go, I'd just like to remind you that you're amazing, and I hope you have a wonderful day.